What is up, guys? So with Thor Ragnarok recently coming out, being the 17th movie in the MCU franchise, I thought I'd rank all 17 of the MCU movies with like half a minute to a minute mini reviews. I actually changed my mind a lot since the last time I did this with the just 16 movies, so this list might not be 100% similar to that last video. So here it is, all 17 Marvel Cinematic Universe movies ranked. Number 17, The Incredible Hulk. You'll probably see The Incredible Hulk at the bottom of most lists. It just doesn't hold up with the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The movie was boring and bland. Edward Norton really wasn't as good as Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. The CGI for the Hulk doesn't look that great, which is probably why the movie decided to put the Hulk in the shadows for most of it, which was really annoying. The only time we saw the Hulk in full CGI glory was at the final fight against the Abomination, which was actually a pretty good fight. That fight is really the only good thing about this movie. Number 16 is Thor: The Dark World. This has got to be the most forgettable Marvel movie yet. Honestly, I don't remember most of it. All I remember is that the movie was boring and had a really weak villain. Marvel has always had a problem with their villains, and Malekith is a prime example of one of those villains that's just not memorable. He's just so forgettable. I think he wanted to engulf the universe in darkness or something, and that's just so stupid. It takes away any stakes because we know Marvel isn't going to let the villain destroy the universe so early on, and in a Thor movie, Thanos actually might destroy the universe in Infinity War. That's actually possible, but in this movie, in Thor: The Dark World, we know it wasn't possible, so there are really no stakes. The movie had a pretty good final fight, and the third act wasn't bad. It was pretty good. The movie was generally entertaining, but it was still pretty forgettable with a weak villain. Number 15 is Iron Man 3, or maybe I should call it Tony Stark 3, because we barely saw Iron Man in this movie. The movie was entertaining and funny and was doing a great job at the beginning with the Mandarin. He was scary and threatening. He was a great villain, but then there was the twist. Sure, I didn't see the twist coming, but even still, it was such a stupid twist. They were doing such a great job, and then they stupidly decided that the movie needed a twist when it really didn't. And then the twist made the movie go from having a great villain to yet another forgettable, boring, and bland villain. So the movie was entertaining and funny, and had some really cool fight scenes with Iron Man. But first of all, it created a huge plot hole at the end where Iron Man decided to destroy all his armors, and then suddenly he has like 50 armors in Age of Ultron. But anyway, this movie was funny, entertaining, had some great fight scenes, but it had a terrible villain and a stupid plot twist, and it created a big plot hole. Number 14, Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is a movie I thought is hated a little too much. It's not as good as most MCU movies, but it's not terrible. It was entertaining. It had some awesome Iron Man fight scenes with great CGI. Black Widow was a badass. I didn't mind all the setup for the Avengers because the Avengers was awesome. So if you're going to set it up, then sure, go ahead, set it up. And I also didn't mind the drunk Tony moments. They were actually really funny, and dealing with alcohol abuse has really been a huge part of the Iron Man character in the comics for a while. The only thing I really didn't like about the movie is the villain. Whiplash was a terrible villain with just another big Iron Man suit, copying the first movie. And just in general, Whiplash, or Ivan Drago, he was just a really, really bad villain. Number 13 is Thor. Thor isn't very memorable, which seems to be a recurring theme with Thor movies, but it's a lot better than Thor: The Dark World. It was pretty entertaining with some really funny moments. It had a great plot and a great villain, and just in general, it was a pretty good movie. It wasn't great, but it was pretty good. A lot of people complained that Thor wasn't Thor enough in this movie, that he was on Earth for too long, and while that's a fair complaint, I didn't mind it. This was basically an origin story movie. So it was basically his origin story, becoming a hero, not becoming Thor, but becoming a superhero. So I didn't mind the fact that he wasn't Thor for a lot of it. It's not the same as Iron Man 3, which was his third movie. This is an origin story. In most origin stories, the hero doesn't become a hero until like halfway through the movie. So it didn't really bother me at all. Number 12 is Thor Ragnarok. Click in the top right corner of the video for my full review. I did do a full review on this video, on this movie. But in short, a lot of people love this movie. Now, while I agree it's definitely the best of the Thor movies, that's not saying much. I thought the movie was hilarious, but the tone of the movie didn't fit the story. It was a very comedy-driven movie, which takes away from the epicness, stakes, and emotional moments of the movie. You can have comedy in the movie, but when comedy drives the plot, it drives the movie, it takes away from the epicness, stakes, and emotion of the movie. Hulk was a little off in this movie. The CGI looked weird. Mark Ruffalo was really, really bad in this movie. For some reason, and then the 2-year-old Hulk wasn't as entertaining as a mindless rage monster Hulk. But the movie had some awesome fight scenes, and Hela was a pretty good villain. Number 11 is Avengers: Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron definitely wasn't as good as the first Avengers movie, but it was still mostly great. It didn't make it into the top 10 because the MCU is a great franchise. It has a lot of great movies, more than 10. So even though it didn't make it in the top 10, it was still a pretty great movie. I really liked Ultron as a villain. He was menacing and looked awesome. Ultron is one of the best MCU villains for me, or at least MCU movie villains. Age of Ultron had some great fight scenes, especially the Iron Man versus Hulk fight, but the Avengers versus Ultron army was pretty boring. It was basically zero stakes. It looked like the Avengers were basically tearing through tissue paper, and then the Quicksilver death was stupid because we just met him, but everything else was awesome. It wasn't like Thor Ragnarok where the comedy took away from the epicness. I thought this movie didn't have too much comedy, so it was a pretty epic movie. Number 10 is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange brought magic into the MCU and made it work really, really well. The movie was fun, it was funny, it was really awesome. But the highlight of this movie were the fight scenes, the way they used magic to fight each other, and the creative way they fought the bad guy at the end, even in the middle. It was really creative, it was really nice, it was really just really enjoyable to watch. And then the part where Doctor Strange bargained with Dormammu, that was awesome and a really creative new way to defeat the villain. Really, the only problem I had with this movie was the perception of time. It didn't show us how much time passed while Doctor Strange was training. It could have been a day, it could have been like a week, it could have been 4 years, we have no clue. So that's really my only problem with this movie. Everything else was really great. Number 9 is Iron Man. Iron Man perfectly started the MCU. It was a great origin story movie with a great plot, incredible casting of Tony Stark. Ironmonger was a fine villain, not the best, but not the worst either. But everything else about this movie was really, really good, especially the casting of Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. does a really good job, like an incredible job of portraying Tony Stark. He perfectly portrays him. This movie came out in 2008, and for the time, the CGI for the Iron Man suit looked really, really good. It looked incredible for the time. This movie made Iron Man go from a B-list superhero from an A-list superhero, so I have to give the movie credit for that. But the movie isn't higher on the list because while this movie is great, I just feel like the next 8 movies are a little bit better. Some of them are a lot better, but still, Iron Man is a great movie. Number 8 is Captain America: The First Avenger. I don't know why this movie has such a low rating on IMDb. It has like 8.6. It's the second lowest rated MCU movie on IMDb. Only higher than Hulk, The Incredible Hulk. I don't know why. This movie was great. It did a great origin story. Red Skull was a really great villain. I thought Chris Evans was an incredible Captain America, maybe even as good as Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. And I really didn't mind the fact that this movie set up the Avengers because, again, the Avengers was awesome. So if you're going to set it up, go ahead. I really enjoyed watching this movie. Maybe more than most people, but still, I really enjoyed it. It might not be the funniest movie, but honestly, I don't mind that. I don't need comedy in any of these movies. I like comedy in small doses, but when a movie focuses on comedy, I don't like it. So not having comedy in a movie, that's fine with me. Number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is hilarious, and I know I just said I don't need comedy in a Marvel movie, but this movie perfectly blended comedy with story and action. Ronan wasn't the greatest villain, but everything else about this movie was great. Every character in this movie, especially Groot, maybe not especially Groot, Drax, Peter Quill, and Groot were the best characters. Rocket Raccoon and Gamora were good too, but not as good as those two. Drax was hilarious. Groot was just awesome. Peter Quill was a great main character. So this movie was really good. Everything except for the main villain was incredible. Number 6 is Guardians of the Galaxy 2. This movie is basically the same thing as the first one, with not as in the story, but with it perfectly blends comedy with action and story. But this movie had a better Groot. I think Baby Groot is better than the normal Groot, and had a better villain in Ego. so that's why it's above the first movie. Number 5 is Ant-Man. Ant-Man, just like Guardians of the Galaxy, perfectly blended comedy with action and story, but Ant-Man has a better villain, better main character with more interesting powers, and a better final fight. Ant-Man did have the final fight that the villain had the same powers as the hero, but I think Ant-Man does it better than any other Marvel movie. It's really interesting, it's funny, it's fun, it's epic, it's badass. The highest aspect of the movie was original for a Marvel movie, so it's really nice to see some variety in the MCU. I really liked Ant-Man. It's one of my favorite MCU movies. You could tell that because it's number 5. Number 4 is Spider-Man Homecoming. This movie, for me, is by far the best Spider-Man movie ever. I never liked the Sam Raimi trilogy, and Amazing Spider-Man 2 was terrible. Really, the only good Spider-Man movies before this movie came out was just Amazing Spider-Man, and then this movie came out, and it's easily the better out of the two. Tom Holland did a great job as Peter Parker, and an even better Spider-Man. For me, he's the best Peter Parker ever, best Spider-Man ever. This movie was hilarious, which, I said earlier that comedy doesn't need to be in a Marvel movie. It does need to be in a Spider-Man movie, and it worked really, really well. The Vulture was an incredible villain, probably the best MCU villain ever. Michael Keaton did a great job portraying Adrian Toomes. In fact, he was actually scarier when outside of the suit because of how great Michael Keaton was. Number 3 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This movie was badass. It proves that you don't need to have comedy in a Marvel movie for it to be great or for it to be well received by critics. This movie was so badass. It had some of the best fight scenes ever, some actual real stakes, and some great emotional moments. It also had some of the best MCU villains ever in Alexander Pierce and the Winter Soldier. This movie was just so good. It was awesome. It was one of the best MCU movies ever. Or for me, it was the third best. Number 2 is The Avengers. The Avengers was the first time we ever saw a group of superheroes coming together to form a team, and it was done so well. Seeing all the superheroes together was epic. Describing this movie it's just awesome. Describing the Winter Soldier, I said it's badass. This movie was awesome. Everything about it was awesome. It started a tiny bit slow at the beginning, but it was worth it because it came together. It all cumulated, that's the word, cumulated into the most epic movie MCU has made ever until the next movie came out, or number 1 on this list, but this movie was and is awesome. Number 1 is Captain America: Civil War. You might have noticed that all 3 Captain America movies were in the top 10 in this video, and that's because all 3 of them were amazing. This Captain America is, for me, by far the best superhero movie trilogy ever. I didn't really like Dark Knight that much. I didn't really like Spider-Man that much. The second X-Men trilogy is pretty good with Days of Future Past and First Class, but Apocalypse isn't that great, so Captain America is and always will be, maybe not always will be, but so far is the best superhero movie ever, and maybe even the best movie trilogy ever. I don't know, but really this movie is awesome. Also, the trilogy just gets better and better with every movie, and this movie is awesome. It not only is it a great Captain America movie, it's also really a great Avengers movie, because basically it's an Avengers movie, and while you might say that you would prefer a Captain America standalone movie, this was both a standalone movie for Captain America and an Avengers movie. Captain America was the main character, and he's not the main character in the Avengers movies. He's one of them, but here he is the main character, and then the rest of the Avengers are there too, and it's worked so perfectly. There is some comedy in this movie, but not too much that it ruins everything. There are actual stakes. There are a lot of emotional moments. The fight scenes are incredible. This movie is awesome. It's epic. It's badass. I love this movie so much. Captain America: Civil War is the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie ever. For now, maybe Infinity War will be better. Maybe even Black Panther will be better. We'll find out next time I do this, which will be all 18 MCU movies ranked when Black Panther comes out, and then Infinity War and all 19. We'll see. But let me know what your favorite MCU movie is in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.